This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV. It's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
Here at the Almond Joy Factory, where tropical vibes abound, we use soft, fresh-tasting coconut.
The crunchiest almonds and delicious chocolate candy.
Ah, but do you know what our most important ingredient is? Sometimes you feel like a nut.
Sometimes you don't.
Almond Joy's got nuts and something even way better than that. Yes, Almond Joy is made with almonds and joy.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
You're listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast, episode 336. The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie. Choo, choo. Welcome to the Animation Addicts Podcast with the Rotoscopers, the #1 place to get your animation fix with animation addicts just like you. Each episode, we dive into the wonderful world of animation featuring Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, and everything in between. From hilarious discussions and movie reviews to interviews with industry insiders, this show's mission is to brighten your day through our love of animation. So hop on your nerdy couch, grab some snacks, and get ready to hang out with your animation besties because it's time to dive into today's episode. Hey there, Animation Addicts. I'm Morgan Stradling.
And I'm Chelsea Robson.
All right, Chelsea, I got a question for you. Daffy or Porky?
I think I'm going to go with Porky on this one.
Oh.
You know, he's got style, he's got class, and he's the
straight
things
man
together.
Yeah. Well, I would go Daffy. I really enjoy Daffy's wacky side, his hot-headedness. He is really one of the epitome of the term loony, which is what we are talking about today. We are talking about The Day the Earth Blew Up, a Looney Tunes movie, which comes out March 14th. And we both got to see it. This has been out, I don't know, people saw it at a certain film festival in October, and then there was another group of people who saw it in December, and then the past month or so, the screeners have been coming out for this one. But the big day is finally here, March 14th, and we both saw it, and we have lots to talk about.
So much to talk about.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadlines so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
All right, so before we get started, let's talk about this film. Like we mentioned, the film comes out March 14th, 2025. Initially, it was supposed to come out in February, so you might see some trailers that show February 28th as the release date, but then they ended up pushing it back 2 weeks. So here we are. The day is finally here. Production studio, Warner Brothers Animation. Distributor, Ketchup Entertainment. We'll talk about them. Director, Pete Braungart. And then screenwriters. Wow. Remember how I said, hey, we should add in the screenwriter section to this because it's important to talk about them. Well, oh boy, do we have quite the list. I think we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 writers on this. And hey, since I included this, I'm going to mention them all. Derek Bachman, Pete Braungart, Kevin Costello, Andrew Dickman, David Gemmell, Alex Kirwan, Ryan Kramer, Jason Riker, Michael Rucco, Johnny Ryan, and Eddie Trigueros. And I'm probably butchering all of those names. The composer is Joshua Mosier. Budget $15 million, and box office we don't know as of currently. I think it has maybe $2 million right now. It says $1.7 million. It's been released in a very few markets, very small international markets. But we will find out on March 14th, how well this one does. Now, a few things before we get started. All of the screenwriters, what on earth is happening there? Well, to understand what's happening with this movie, The Day the Earth Blew Up, is that really this is kind of the capstone, or there was an HBO series called Looney Tunes Cartoons, a very SEO friendly title. If you ask me, I feel like that's all studios do now. They're like, we need to make this the most SEO friendly title ever, so that way everyone can see it when they Google it. It's like, okay, yeah, thanks, but that's fine. Looney Tunes Cartoons. It is very clear what it is. There are 209 episodes that Pete Braungart, the director, he was involved with. He was kind of the producer, and so he's very, very familiar with these characters. And the reason there's so many screenwriters is because it was more of like a writer's room. Obviously, the television has the writer's room, and that's the way you're able to get so much content. And so I think since he had and I didn't verify this with him, but I'm pretty sure this is what happened, is because he had so much success with all of these guys in the writer's room for the show that when the time came to make the movie, like, of course, we're just going to keep everyone here, and then we're just going to keep chugging along. Yeah. So that's why there are so many. And then with the distributor, Ketchup Entertainment. Now, I mentioned this in my interview with the stars of the show and Pete. So if you haven't heard already, go back to episode 335. That's where I interviewed Eric Bauza. He's the voice of Daffy and Porky. Candy Milo, who's the voice of Petunia Pig. And then obviously the director, Pete Braungart. So great opportunity to talk to them. But in my interview with Candy and Eric, I mentioned, wow, it's just really perfect that a distributor comes along called Ketchup Entertainment. Of all, it would have been more perfect if it was called Acme Entertainment, right?
It's so good.
It's so good.
From the time that we first started talking about this, in the episode where we were looking forward at 2025, I said that this was the movie that I was most looking forward to of all of the movies that were going to come out. And I just remembered also talking about the distributor being Ketchup Entertainment and just being like, that is too perfect. It's just too perfect.
Honestly, at first glance, I would have thought that it was an offshoot of Warner Brothers. You know how Disney has Disney distribution, right? But it's like, they're the same, but they're not, right? I honestly, if you would have asked me, I said, oh, like that's just their distributor arm for Warner Brothers, maybe for the cartoons or something. Nope, it's totally different. So this film had and I talk about this with Pete in the interview, but they got it along. Then the pandemic happens. They have a hard time. They're able to finish it up because everyone could go remote and they could just animate at home. But then when it came for a distributor, the landscape of movies had completely changed. And so then they really struggled to get a distributor. I read that they finished animating in the spring of 2024. So just a year ago. And then they couldn't find anyone. And he said that Annecy, the film festival, really opened doors for them and made things, they did a screening there and it just changed the game. And that's where Ketchup Entertainment was at Annecy. And then, they came on as this distributor. So, but then even then we've still had months and months, finding the right time slot. When can this be? Pushing it back. So finally the day is here, and it's, I can't imagine being involved on a movie and then finishing it and then having all this turmoil, not only during production because of a worldwide pandemic, but then after the fact, you finish a film and it's like, well, we can't go anywhere from here because there's no distributor.
Right.
And then on top of that, there's the Coyote versus Acme movie, which has been shelved by Warner Brothers for just basically a tax write-off. And this is supposed to be like a courtroom drama, and it looks so funny, and people who've seen it said it's amazing, and they really want to get this out there, but for some reason Warner Brothers just said, hey, we would rather take the tax write-off on this than put it out. So disappointing. So before we even get started with our review, go see this movie. Go see it in theaters, because if we ever want to see Coyote versus Acme, then you have to have this one do well first to show Warner Brothers that the love and the attention and the popularity for Looney Tunes is still there.
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is a Porky and Daffy movie, and that's basically it. We have Petunia Pig, but as far as other Looney Tunes characters, that's one of the first things I noticed is that we don't have this giant cast of characters, which makes sense. This basically feels like an expanded short, where the shorts are very focused on one character, or maybe two. Maybe there's a few that play in there, but it's not like you're just walking around. He's like, "Oh, hey, Bugs, hey, Daffy," and you see people. It's very contained, these stories, and so that's what this one is. And it's the relationship between Porky and Daffy, Porky Pig and Daffy Duck, both voiced by Eric Bauza, who he also does so many other things. He does Bugs, he does Foghorn. You look at his list, and it never ends. All the things that he
so amazing.
He does. It's shocking and fascinating and very inspiring all in one.
It's like, hats off to you, man. You really came through for everyone.
Yeah. And so what I loved about this movie from the very beginning, I kind of went in a little bit blind. There was a few things that I had, researched and looked at, but I'd heard that it was good from our friend Rachel Wagner. And okay, I'm going to give this one a chance. I'm really excited for this one. And from the very beginning, we have this opening scene that's very sci-fi. And you have you have the scientist. And the scientist, from the very beginning, the opening scene, his animation. Now, I haven't seen these Looney Tunes cartoons to see, the quality of the animation. But for my first thoughts and experience is I see his animation, and humans are hard to do, and it just looks good.
All of them look so good.
Yes, it's just top notch. And I'm like, okay, just straight from an animation perspective, this is going to be something special. And I was very happy going into that.
Yeah, the very first thing you see, there's a little bit of that nostalgia to it because it does look very iconic. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like they've, done the whole 3D changeover or tried to make it something that it isn't, but they really, really tried to keep it the same as what you would remember. And even just like the way things are drawn, just make it look like it was back in the day.
Yes.
Which was just so much fun.
Yes. And they even used the designs for Porky and Daffy based on Bob Clampett. And Bob Clampett was one of the iconic directors and animators of the 30s, 40s. And yeah, so the Daffy that we see isn't the normal Daffy that maybe you're 100% used to, maybe in Space Jam. There's just these slight differences and nuances. And I really, really liked the designs and the way that they went. And so with that, they grew up from little wee ones, a little piglet and a little duckling on a farm.
Flashback with Farmer Jim. It's just like...
Farmer Jim is one of my favorite characters in the whole thing. For me, he's the breakout Looney Tunes star. I want more Farmer Jim in my life. I want more flashbacks. I want them to make more shorts just showing, them growing up on the farm. I loved the cutout animation, looked like a cardboard of him walking along and just his mouth would move up and down. It was so silly. It was funny. It made me giggle. And then there are moments where it's a little bit more serious, where he turns around and he has more full animation. And it was funny. I loved it. There's all these little moments and quirky things that they did that just were so great.
And you can tell that, everybody that was in the writer's room just had so much fun with this. In Looney Tunes fashion, everything is a gag. And the pacing of it was really true to the canon, and I appreciated that too. So every little thing is a little bit of a gag, and that it keeps you very engaged, and it keeps you just like laughing and giggling the whole time.
Yeah, it didn't take itself too seriously ever. And for example, there's the HOA inspector or, board member, whoever she was, who comes up. And I just thought her design was amazing. Like, she had these giant boobs, which I feel like most people would turn away from. For example, X-Men 97, they totally nerfed Rogue. She has no butt. And even like the place, here I'm talking butt anatomy, but like the crack, if you will, in a jumpsuit, like they just erase that to pretend that there's nothing there. So she has no curves and there's no dimension to her, and it's just flat as flat can be. And people were complaining about that because like, why are you doing this? And so seeing in this where they just like go all out the other direction, but not in a gross way. It's just that was her design.
Yeah, and it was just, once again, it seemed very like nostalgic to how things used to be. Like they didn't used to care.
Right. Yeah. It was funny.
Get
over it. Yeah.
Later on, like one of my favorite moments was like they're in the park and they have this girl that's like in these booty shorts, and it was like you pointed out that this was actually like an influencer, and I was like, that makes so much sense.
Yes. Yeah.
But like she was just like, that was the main thing that I remember. Like, well, dang, like I don't think I've seen like booty shorts in a cartoon in a really long time.
One thing that I really did enjoy, so we have this newish character, or very unknown character of Petunia Pig. Now she's in the Looney Tunes cartoons, not Looney Tunes cartoons, meaning the short. Well, she is in that actually, but I'm talking way back. I'm talking the 30s. She was introduced as Porky's love interest, but with Bugs becoming more popular and some of the other characters, more so than Porky, they kind of moved away from her. There was no real need because they wanted to do more shorts with Bugs and everyone else. So, she's very, D-list, if you will, if you were to rank them all as far as appearances and popularity. But they brought her back, and I thought it was really perfect because these two play off each other so well. We have the straight man Porky Pig, and we have the wacky nut job Daffy. And she is that third balancing point. She's the smart one. She's able to move the plot along. She's fun. She's this flavor scientist. And she really helps him move the plot along.
Well, she's dedicated to her job, man. Like, everything is about finding that grandest flavor out to come. Like, she's very determined, which I was like, the whole thing is just, I felt like they did a good job.
Yeah, it was a fun aspect of her character. And that she was just so miffed about the super strawberry.
Right.
It's just basically a repackage, or rename. And, she is working so hard at her craft as this flavor scientist and trying to create these unique combinations and testing them out. And I believed it. I liked it.
Yeah.
And so basically the plot of this movie is that they've grown up. Farmer Jim has left. Wah, wah. So sad. Pete mentioned that
did he leave or did he die?
Well, he said he wanted
like he died.
It seemed like he died, but he just kind of like walked off screen, right? Like,
yeah. Right.
It's not like he did a typical Looney Tunes, fell off a cliff and died, and then pan to the gravestone later, right? No, but Pete mentioned that they wanted to play off the dead Disney parent thing. Yeah. So that's why they kill him off. So they inherit the house. The HOA lady comes and she does not appreciate, they whip it into shape super quick, but then at the very last minute, they notice there's a giant gaping hole in the roof that has neon green ooze coming out of it. And so they need to make money to fix the roof. And in the process of this, they encounter Petunia, and then that actually people are being taken over by this alien mind virus that has infected the chewing gum. So that's the plot. And it's really silly. It's really funny and simple. Like, it's very simple. It's not overcomplicated. And the solution to this isn't even overcomplicated on how do we stop the zombies, right?
Right.
One thing that I really loved when they were doing these odd jobs is that we had the short within the film. And so the aspect ratio changes. We get the intro for like Daffy, Porky, like the old-timey cartoons. And then it's like a Looney Tunes short within the movie of them finding odd jobs, failing at it, trying to do this, trying to get money. I love the moment of Daffy getting really irritated with someone's overly complicated latte order. I thought that was a funny one.
Yeah, and then they finally make it into the job of being in this factory where all they have to do is just pull the lever. Just pull it. All he wants to do is smash it with a hammer. So, I mean, just playing into their personalities. There's just, once again, spot on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. One thing that this is inspired on is these these sci-fi B movies of the 50s. And so they're trying to play on a lot of elements of that. We have the aliens, we have like the green goo, the music. We'll talk about the music in a little bit, and it's all just giving this vibe. One character we didn't talk about is this new character called the Invader. Very much gave me Yzma vibes. So over the top, so dramatic, right? And I thought he was really funny. I loved his design. You're thinking, oh, well, this would be a perfect thing for Marvin the Martian. And I was going to ask Pete that, but we didn't have enough time. But it seems like if you were going to do Marvin the Martian, it just would take away from Porky, Daffy, that dynamic. Actually, they've met Marvin the Martian in previous cartoons before, so there's history there. I mean, yeah, you could pretend it's like they've never met him before, but at first I was like, man, I love Marvin the Martian so much. I think he's so cute. I remember having a Marvin the Martian embroidered t-shirt. So back in the 90s, they had these WB stores.
Yes.
And one of the things, if you remember outside, it had a big Daffy. No, was it Daffy and Bugs? Like these giant statues that went all the way from floor to ceiling outside of the store, flanking the doors, almost like they're guarding this precious, valuable WB store. I think it was Daffy because he's number 2 most popular, right? And they had so many merchandise. It's basically WB's equivalent of the Disney store. And one thing that this was really big in the 90s, they had these embroidered shirts where in one of the corners had just some designs of the characters. And I'm pretty sure I had one of Marvin the Martian, and I went and I got that one on vacation in California one time. And man, and now I want to go back on eBay and look up all of those old shirts and just buy them for vintage. Yes, I will be wearing those. So anyway, Marvin the Martian, he's great, but he's not in this.
I felt like they did a good job, putting in a new antagonist, because as it goes to the end where the whole thing is just a gag, which you expect, and I loved him for it. And it just comes out to be like the only reason that the alien was there was getting his the boba drink, which honestly, I've never even had one of these things, but they've just expanded over the last...
They're the new cupcakes. They are the new sugar cookie shop. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I will say, when that gag, the whole reason he wasn't actually trying to destroy Earth. He was trying to create a giant bubble to protect the Earth from this asteroid, because they have the most precious commodity of all time in all space, boba, and he drinks his boba. And we see him drinking that before, but it's not really highlighted, but the little breadcrumbs are there. And I'm thinking, boba sucks. Boba is not even delicious. And then Petunia got my back. She says, boba, it's not even that flavorful. And I'm like, yes, hello.
That's funny.
Because at first I was like, oh, this is the lamest. That's like probably the lamest part of the whole thing. Like that gag didn't work for me. But then Petunia saved it. So I was like, okay. I see what you're doing here.
Thanks, Petunia.
Yeah, that was funny. And I really liked so talking about the music. So they go, and the music is very retro. It's true to form and what you would expect with these, sci-fi B movies. And they brought in an instrument, and Chelsea and I talked about this off air, called a theremin. Chelsea, you've talked about this in a previous episode.
Yeah, in the episode of Looking Forward, there was another movie. It's the Japanese animation one where they brought in a theremin in the background, and I was like, "What? What are you doing? Why are you trying to be funny like that?" Like, it's not even trying to be funny. It's like you're trying to be hipster, like by bringing in a theremin. And like, I know hipster. I was living near East Nashville, and that was very, very hipster when I was there.
I can only imagine.
And like, I went to I don't know, it's just kind of a club place, and they had a band playing, and this girl comes out and brings out her theremin and just likes doing it. And I'm like, you're not that good. Like, it's just so hard to do a theremin.
Right.
Like, you have to have, like, to even do the same set of notes, I don't even know if it's humanly possible, because you have to put your hand, basically it's like a tuning fork, but in the shape of like a triangle. So you have like an isosceles triangle, so you have the two sides coming together, and you put your hand in the middle, and based on where you have it, it sends off a certain hum or like a ring kind of a sound. And it's just like, it's so hard. And maybe I'm bitter because I've never been able to understand. I've never been able to get it, but here we are. So it was in that episode where I saw like, oh yeah, we got a whole theremin. And then Morgan's like, have you ever heard of a theremin? Like 2 days ago when I was talking, I'm
Yes.
like, of course.
Yes. That must have gone completely over my head. You were explaining this instrument that I had no idea about. I'm like, okay, I'll just let Chelsea talk about it. But then I forgot about it until, later it popped up. So that episode is 329 if you want to go back and listen to that one, where we talk about all of the films of 2025. And the theremin gets not even talking about this particular movie, gets a shout out. So funny. That's super fun. So with this, you could, do stock sounds and the theremin's like that alien weird noise that you hear. So that's kind of what it is. And I'll include a link in the show notes of a little demo that I went this past week when I was like, I needed to learn more about this instrument. So there was a really good one on YouTube that I found. So I'll share that so you can check it out yourself. But yeah, I thought the score was really great. It really played well with the sci-fi aspect, but then the traditional Looney Tunes where you have the big band, big orchestra, and then the zany elements where you have the boings and the slide whistles. Whoop, there's so much going on with this, and they did it perfectly.
Yeah, they really did.
Speaking of Bob Clampett, I'm sure there's Easter eggs all over the place, but there was one that I noticed was Clampett Diner, where they go and they're having that conversation. So he was, like we said, one of the animators, one of the very famous Looney Tunes animators. So I'm like, oh, I love it. So yeah,
I did really like the change or the gag of him being not a villain in the end.
Mm-hmm.
It is the thing that turns it on its head. And I felt like that's exactly what a Looney Tunes movie would do.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I definitely get behind that. And, they go back and they're like, oh, but all we have left now is just this picture of good old Farmer Jim. And they turn it around and it's actually his insurance.
his home insurance policy.
But his home insurance policy is in case of this very, very specific thing.
Alien invasion, yes.
Yes.
Or meteor, yeah.
And they get $5 million. And so they're able to really upgrade their house to exactly what they would want.
Which I'm like, no, this is the classic I won the lottery where you blow it all. There's no need. You just needed Farmer Jim's house back. You didn't need to buy the mansion.
Well, they didn't buy a mansion. They rebuilt it.
Well, with their money, they bought it. Yes, I know. It was funny. But I think they over-improved to the neighborhood. Let's just put it that way.
No, gas. Yeah, it's definitely its own place now. But the whole thing, they're just little gags. Everything was a gag, and I appreciated that.
Yes, tons of gags. So that's one thing about this movie is I felt like I was laughing the whole time, and they were real laughs. They were, laugh out loud. They were internal laughs, that's funny, their whole gamut, and they never stop. And so I think all of those writers really, got their money's worth to loading this with a ton of gags, ton of jokes, really funny background, Easter eggs, and at the same time, a really solid film and good story.
Yeah.
For me, there's a few movies coming out during this spring break time. My kids just started spring break, and on my Instagram stories, I always share just these little mini reviews because I have a lot of moms that follow me, and they're like, I love your reviews. It's so helpful. And I haven't done them so far for the year, and I'm going to go through them. And, because some of these are still in theaters, for example, Dogman and Paddington in Peru, for example. And so I'm gonna go and do those a little bit later. But at the end, I'm gonna do a ranking of okay, if you can only go see one movie during spring break with your kids, which one is it? And there was one other movie that I have reviewed on the website. It's called Night at the Zoopocalypse, which I'll include a link to that in the show notes. And it's a similar vibe, surprisingly. Mm-hmm. It's about an asteroid that hits a zoo and turns all the animals into zombies. And it's also a sci-fi thriller, but this is more on the horror side. And that movie is an independent movie. Initially, I was like, I don't know, this looks kind of dumb. It looks really cheap. It's from, it's an independent studio, which you do what you can with the budget. But that movie was phenomenal. And
nice.
It came out of nowhere. But not as good as this one. And so if you want to read my full review, go read that one. But if you have a chance to go see two, I would recommend both of them because I thought the other one was just so good. The coloring was really cool. This one, likewise, they really amped up some of these, not so, the neon greens and the pinks. I felt that they did a really great job with those. But if I were to recommend one movie for someone to see over spring break, not having seen Snow White, but, I'm just going to go out on a limb and expect that it's not going to be as good as this one, I would recommend The Day the Earth Blew Up because it basically has everything. And especially for a family and you have a wide range of ages, you have little kids, you have older kids, I think this hits checks all the boxes for that. And so I'm shocked, because this could just be nothing special, but they really, really put a lot of time, effort, and love into this. And I think you can really tell the final product shines.
I agree.
So one thing that you definitely want to do, they have a mid-credit scene, and that's where you're talking about they build the monstrosity. Mm-hmm. And then they do have an end credit scene, so you have to stay all the way to the very end, and that's where you have your traditional, I'm not going to spoil, you're listening, we spoiled the whole thing, but it's the traditional, that's all folks. In my review, I didn't spoil it, but I'll spoil it here. That's all folks, Looney Tunes ending, and they kind of tease at a sequel. So, yes. But I'm like, okay, yes, a sequel would be great, but in the meantime, you already have a movie that's done. Just, this one has to do well. Please do well. Come on, let us have it, please.
And somebody needs to just accidentally leak
the
other movie, if not, because
then no one will see
part
it.
of it. Do a whole Deadpool type leaking of just a clip,
quote unquote leak,
right?
Yes, I love it. Well, I mean, a leak can be intentional, so I guess the quote unquote isn't. Yeah, we're pretty sure that Ryan Reynolds leaked that on purpose to force the studio's hand. That's a good story. All right. Any other last minute things that you want to talk about? Things that you enjoyed? I loved all the quotes and jokes.
Yeah. Overall, I felt like this movie is just one of those that it's full of popcorn moments. Just sit, laugh, enjoy, and just kind of take it in. So, do we want to rate this right now?
Yeah, let's rate it.
I am going to give it 4 stars for me. I think the only reason I don't give it 5 is just because it was not super memorable as far as a couple days later. I don't really feel the need to go back and watch, but maybe in a week or 2 or a month, maybe I would.
Yeah.
So,
nice.
Yeah, 4 stars.
Yeah, I'm likewise going to rate it 4 stars. It's solid. It's good. It's something that, I don't need to watch it immediately right after, but most films probably don't have that. But the humor was spot on. The animation was top-notch, stellar. The writing, the script, the characters, there were a lot of emotional moments that I really felt for these characters. I felt sad for them. I felt happy for them. I was rooting for them. I had a lot invested in this movie as I was watching it. So that was a win. And again, we didn't even talk about this, but it's 2D animated.
Yeah.
Which is a rarity nowadays. It's almost a lost art form. And so that's another thing. It is almost this lost art form. So you're thinking, the animation's going to be something. Maybe it's the puppet 2D animation that so many of the TV shows do nowadays, where it looks 2D, but it's actually just like a rig behind it where you kind of just marionette the arms up and down. And it can look really smooth and really nice, but it's not someone sitting there with a pen or a stylus. And I did confirm every frame is hand drawn. And so to me, that's just, it's just amazing. So I really hope this does well. There's this perception by Hollywood and the movie executives that 2D animation is not cool. It's not hip. Audiences don't want that. But this is amazing. The animation is amazing. It's based on this classic property that is amazing. So I loved it. I really can't wait to go see it again with my family because they're not really acquainted with Looney Tunes. And so I think they'll really enjoy it. Although, just this last week, on Saturday, my husband put on a show on like an old-timey, network, kind of like Turner Movie Classic, or Turner Classic Movies, TCM. It was one of those, like TV Land, one of those things. And it just happened to be Saturday morning cartoons. And the show was called Bugs Bunny and Friends. And they sat and they were watching all the Bugs Bunny, different shorts that were happening. And there was a Roadrunner one. It was Bugs being the Roadrunner to Coyote. And it was really funny. And I'm like, again, they're just rubbing this Roadrunner Coyote stuff in my face. But yeah, so I think that's probably their first introduction to Looney Tunes and they're like, can we record this? And I'm like, yes, we can.
Aww.
And so we recorded it, and they only play it once a week on Saturday. So it's going to take a while to build up a little bit of a library. But I think they'll be very excited to see this because they're somewhat acquainted with these characters from, one episode, but they liked it enough that they wanted more. So yeah.
Awesome.
Fun movie, really fun movie. Go check out my interview with the 2 voice actors, Eric and Candy, and then obviously the director. I pack them all into one big episode, which is a lot of fun. I did put the video on YouTube where you can watch that as well, although The quality is not super high res. The link that they sent me was, it is what it is. So it's a little bit lower res than I would have preferred, but that's Zoom for you sometimes. But you get to see them, Candy and Eric, in the same room, and they're riffing off each other. It's a lot of fun. And then Pete, he's a great guy. So I'm just pumped for this movie. I don't want to be like a shill for, all these movies, but I love animated films. And when I see a good one, I want it to do well. And this was one where I genuinely was excited to see it. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need more people to see this. So trying to get the word out. Tell your friends, go see it. Let us know your thoughts about this movie. Are you interested in seeing it? And if you had seen it, go, obviously go see it in theaters, and then come back onto this episode, rotoscopers.com/336, and leave us a comment with your review there. And if you also want, you can leave us a longer review. We will do a future voicemail episode. Go to rotoscopers.com/voicemails, or give us a call at 406-646-6575.
You're worried that we're going to sound like a shill for a movie? We haven't liked a movie in like a year.
I know. I hate it. I really do. I'm like, I just want to be positive and happy, and some of these movies have just not delivered. So it's just like, such a breath of fresh air. It's like something amazing, something good. And okay, we didn't even talk about this, but apparently this is kind of a tongue twister. This is the first original feature-length Looney Tunes cartoon feature-length film with the caveat released to a theatrical audience ever.
Wow.
So basically the first Looney Tunes original movie ever. And Space Jam movies don't count because they're the hybrid. And the reason they have to have that caveat released to a theatrical audience, there must be some direct-to-TV, direct-to-video Looney Tunes movies out there that I didn't go back and look, but this is really like the first one to release to theaters that's solely Looney Tunes. And I find that shocking.
Yeah, that really is.
Like 90 years later, we're finally getting around to this. Yeah. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So I would like to, and Peter, I think, he understands these characters really well. And he has the baton now, all the original, Tex Avery and Chuck Jones, they're not there anymore, and Bob Clampett, right? And so you're going to have a lot of people who want to emulate it and aren't just can't. But I think that he has fit in perfectly with this slate of classic directors. Like, he gets it. He gets the characters. He gets what Looney Tunes is, what it's not. And he sticks to that. And that's why this movie's so good.
Awesome.
That's all we have for this episode. Until next time, we are the Rotoscopers. Sometimes I feel like Daffy Duck.
Thuckatash.
Yeah, he does that. He does Sylvester. Yeah. I mean, he does basically all the characters. It's wild. The problem with these like press junket days is you really have like 10 minutes.
Right.
And I wanted to have them do an intro for the podcast. Hey, whatever.
Yeah.
Bowser, the voice of. I thought it would have been really funny because we haven't done those in a while, but we don't really do as many interviews. But they give you your like wrap it up sort of thing.
Yeah, right.
Thank you so much for your time. Goodbye.
Okay, bye.
Because I was already for both of them 30 minutes late, so I'm okay, like I don't want to cause more extra for someone else waiting behind me, so I'm not going to ask him for something like that. But I'm sorry.
And we're back.
I had to go in the other room and change a poopy diaper and then give a child a sucker to convince him to stay in that room and then put the baby to bed. So I'm back.
We are not above bribery.
Yes. All right. You've been listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to help spread the word, be sure to share the podcast with your friends on social media. Just don't forget to tag us at Rotoscopers on Instagram and use the hashtag Animation Addicts. For all the links and full show notes for this episode, go to rotoscopers.com/podcast. Now, if you still can't get enough for your animation fix, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and visit rotoscopers.com for more animation news, reviews, and interviews. Thanks for listening.